Hi there. My name is Juliana Hawk, and I help people who may or may not have been diagnosed with ADHD, and I help you go from suffering to feeling in control and productive. Well, welcome to Easy ADHD. And today we have a very special topic that really is close to my heart because this topic is something I wish I would have known earlier in my life because it really could have helped me. So today's topic is understanding school accommodations. What are they? How to get them, and why your child needs them. And to do this, I asked Stacey Cannon to come onto our show to discuss this. Stacey is founder and coach of Hill Country ADHD Coaching based out of Texas. She has over 20 years experience as a pediatric speech pathologist with many of those years spent in the public schools. She is ADCA trained family coach. She is a certified chaos-free family trained coach and an affiliate of Chaos Free Family. Her firsthand experience with ADHD as both a parent and professional gives her unique insight to help others understand what is available for kids with ADHD in schools. Thank you so much, Stacey. And, as I mentioned, Stacey's going to be helping us understand this topic. So let's dive right on into things. And, you know, Stacey, if it's okay with you, what services are available in the public schools for those with ADHD?
Okay, well, first, thank you for having me on today. I think this is valuable information that can be really confusing. So, what's available in the public schools? You can have a 504 plan or a special education, which is an IEP, individual education plan. And I'm just gonna, if it's okay, just briefly just talk about the differences between the two. So special education is guided by IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and that's a law that gives a free, appropriate public education to children with disabilities. And the 504 is guided by the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it's the section in that, which is the 504, and it protects the rights of individuals with disabilities in programs that receive federal funds from the U.S. Department of Education. Now, with a 504, you have to have some sort of physical or emotional impairment, and it has to restrict things like thinking, reading, writing, and that's just to name a few. But there's a bunch of things that it could affect. You can even break both of your hands, and if you can't write for the healing period, you can get a 504 because your hands are broken and you can't write. That is a disability, and that's short term. You can have a disability if your doctor has diagnosed you with ADHD. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. And a 504 is great if somebody only needs some accommodations and there's not as much involved with getting it as the IEP. But for the IEP, you have to get what we call a full individual evaluation, and that's through the school, and a parent would give their permission to do that. Then after that, if you meet the eligibility, you will have a meeting, and that's when your IEP is developed. But both of them allow for accommodations.
I guess for the general public to understand this, what if you could simply put this on the difference between a 504 and an IEP? Is there a simple way to put it?
Well, there's so much that goes into both of them. That was kind of an easy way to do it,
I
but
apologize.
to make it simple, like your special education, you're going to have a lot more rights than you do under 504.
Okay.
Some things overlap. You have a big evaluation that really can provide good information if you want to go that that special education route.
This is phenomenal news. Just, what is available to us and, especially for short term and long term. And so just from how I'm digesting everything, it sounds like an IEP is a little bit more extensive, maybe goes into more of your diagnosis.
Okay, so IEPs, there's a lot more involved. Now with IEPs, for ADHD, if you're looking at that, there's different eligibilities for special education. ADHD falls under the eligibility of other health impaired. So basically, you have to
That's the
have
504.
a doctor say, hey, this child has ADHD, and your district will have its own rules, but generally you have to have some sort of documentation from a doctor saying that they have ADHD. And then, of course, the evaluators will do their evaluation. And they look at different things, but that's a key piece, is you must have that documentation. And there could be, through the testing, there might be other areas that somebody may qualify for as well within special education.
Thank you so much. I think it's just really important to know that this is available. And first of all, with us ADHDers, as we know, ADHD is hereditary. 80% of children that have ADHD, 80% of those children, the parents have ADHD. So I think it's also valuable for us to know this so that the parents can also get the accommodations they need if they want to get started on their, not diagnosis journey, but I think it's all very useful and relative. That being said, what with with my ADHD, it's so much better if I can break down the steps or acknowledge what's the first step. So how do you request a 504 service?
The best way is first mention it to your child's teacher, just so they're in the loop. But find out who the 504 coordinator is at the school. There's usually somebody there who is responsible for that. And a lot of times it's maybe an assistant principal or the school counselor, but letting them know, they'll be able to answer your questions much more than the classroom teacher. Not saying the classroom teacher isn't qualified, but that's their job is to teach in gen ed, so they may not know all the rules that are involved and how to get that going.
And thank you for breaking that down. And I can't help but ask, like, what would the first step to request a special education evaluation would be?
um it would really be the same type of thing. Go to the teacher first so she's aware, and then she can kind of let what she's seeing in the classroom. But I would definitely go to maybe an administrator at the campus and ask for that. Most schools do have a procedure in place where they're looking at certain students where they may want to be evaluated. But let's say you're the parent, but maybe your child is not on that list because there might be other kids, maybe with more, for example, significant needs. I don't want to say, but I mean, teachers can't just throw every name out there. I mean, there has to be some structured way of going about it. But let the administrator know, because then they're the ones who know those rules and what they need to do to follow them.
Mhm. And I really like how you said that, because so much of ADHD is invisible and it's the inward appearance until we are self-aware enough to know those, the symptoms of ADHD. So Let's say that I get an IEP or 504 plan, and you mentioned accommodation. So, what is an accommodation?
So an accommodation are things that are allowed at the classroom level, and it can change a way how a student learns or adapts in their learning environment.
Mhm.
This is very common with those with ADHD. Basically, there are things put in place to put your child on a level playing field with their general education peers. For example, maybe they need to have extra time on a test.
Mhm.
Okay, well, guess what? They're getting that same test, but they just have a little bit longer to take it. Okay, so you're not changing or modifying um, things to where they're on a lower level or anything like that with accommodations. You can have some other ones might be to, I know where I am, and I'm like you said at the beginning, I'm in Texas, but a lot of our stuff is on the computer. So some people may still need paper testing.
Mhm.
Can have reminders to stay on task, small groups, preferential seating. Um, One that I find helpful is sometimes maybe a child may need a designated quiet area if things get too loud and they need to get something done, or noise canceling headphones.
I also wanted to ask you, so something that comes up a lot for me in my working professionals and also myself is just writing written instructions, and also with accommodation of asking, with the trust and safety of asking your employer, can you please write these instructions down? Could I ask for an accommodation of having instructions written?
I would think you should be able to, because that is something that is not that example is not an outrageous request.
Mhm.
And ADHD is a disability. So you have to look at it as they're accommodating their employee. And I know sometimes it's hard. Maybe not everybody's comfortable with letting their employer know, but
Again, trust and safety is everything on
yeah, yeah.
on every level, from coaching to kids to adults. And
Mhm.
I can't help but, just speak for our silent and attentives right here. But what if we ask for an accommodation and they say no? How do we respond to that?
Okay, are we talking for adults or kids?
I'm sorry, for kids.
For kids, okay. For kids, so if they say no, first, listen to what they say, um, and make sure your request for an accommodation is reasonable. Sometimes they may have an alternative, but if they say no to something that's pretty routine and necessary, there are procedures in place on a 504, and then different procedures in place on special education where you can kind of disagree. Okay. And I'm not going to dive into all the logistics of that today, but there are things in place.
And is in a situation like that, when we feel that I may need an accommodation and I'm not receiving it and it's reasonable and they're not offering me an alternative, could I seek your services to help help you advocate for my child?
Absolutely. I do offer, even if it's just, just a consultation, just so you can have a better understanding of what is going on.
Mhm. And in that situation when I receive like I receive accommodation list for my child, and let's just say I chose the best accommodation I thought would work for my child, thinking about their strengths, how they work at home, and the accommodation's not working. What do I do in the event that the accommodation isn't working?
Okay, and that's real easy. Let the teacher know. And, if that teacher is really on top of things and really following through with those accommodations and so forth, they would probably be aware of that as well. But you can have a short little meeting to take it off, change it up. That's all you would need to do on either the 504 or special education side.
And I am really sorry that I am backtracking on the special education element because I somehow missed this, but I wanted to just piggyback on what we mentioned earlier on, how is the eligibility determined for special education? Like you mentioned, like getting an evaluation in ADHD is falls under those the special education, but is there anything else eligibility to wise for special education?
A lot of times you're probably going to have either the school psychologist or diagnostician be part of that eval. And they're going to look at the cognitive profile, and then they're going to look at academics. And really, that in FIEs is the full individual evaluation. So there's going to be areas on communication, assistive technology, health. I'm drawing a blank here. Just like the intellectual area. And so and I know I'm for sociological, which is kind of basically everything going on at home, who you live with, and things like that. Some of that's just going to be narrative based on all the paperwork the parent turns in. But let's say the evaluation is completed, then at the IEP meeting, the evaluator or evaluators will fill the family in on the results if they haven't done it before earlier. Sometimes there's a phone call involved. But it's the committee's decision, and the parents are part of that, as to whether or not they would qualify. And a lot of that is meeting the criteria for certain things. So at the meeting, a parent would be part of determining if their child meets the eligibility of other health impairment. Okay. And if maybe I'm just being hypothetical here, maybe the evaluator also, determined that the child meets eligibility for, let's say, a learning disability. Well, that can be discussed as well. So anyways, there's like a whole slew of different eligibilities for special education. But a meeting with the parent, it's a committee that determines the eligibility. And schools do not diagnose ADHD. So keep that in mind. There's diagnosing, which a doctor does. Schools determine eligibility. Okay.
That's a nugget to know. That's very informative to know. That going back to the very beginning of this recording, that you have to go to your doctor or physician to get that diagnosis, or psychiatrist. And
Yes.
do children see psychiatrists too, or is there a specialist for children?
There's pediatric psychiatrists.
Thank you. Sorry.
Around, I mean, I don't know, there might not be as common as those that just strictly work with adults.
There's something to be said about an informed professional. So whether it's a child psychiatrist. No matter what, I want you to see someone who's informed. I want to just piggyback off of what you said about, the accommodations from the just based off what you said for special education. And I just want to acknowledge that the communication assisted technology and like the sociological that you mentioned, how much that has advanced since when I was a child. Like now they have
Uh-huh.
devices that you can speak by pressing a button. Like I'm just saying the advancements that we have for the next generation to come.
Mhm.
I'm so hopeful for these children as long but another really important aspect I just really want to touch on very quickly is we can give the children our all of our kids all of these accommodations, but it starts with the parent at home, the parents at home of having compassion and teaching these skills at home, because we can get all the accommodations we want, but if the parent isn't teaching and helping at home, it won't be as successful.
And
Uh,
yeah, and carrying over. Yeah. And right. And some of those were like the areas of evaluation, but those lead to those accommodations, especially assistive technology. That's a biggie. And maybe not necessarily for ADHD, but just in general for other types of kids.
and I just want to touch on the assistive technology because this is something that comes up for me. So when I was
Mhm.
a child, I had my books read to me on CD cassette tape from my
Mhm.
Walkman. I would put a CD and it would read it to me. When you say assistive
Mhm.
technology, what are you speaking of?
I mean, technically, I guess that could be one. Um, I mean, like I'm a speech pathologist, so some kids who have significant um, areas of need. If say they're nonverbal, then you can have different things to help with them to communicate. But you can. I mean, sometimes you could have speech to text, which yes, that is assistive technology, and so that could be an accommodation.
Thank you for breaking that down because speech to text has changed my life as a small business owner. So I think that's incredible if we can give that to our children, especially elementary
Mhm.
school kids, and not look at this as a weakness or they can't, but look at this as they can and their strength as a strength that they
Mhm.
can complete this assignment. Like we're here to
Right.
teach that conversation. So thank you for informing us because I would have not known. So thank you. But we're coming to the end of this recording and you've gave us all the tools and strategies that we need to feel successful for an IEP and a 504. And thank you for educating us. I also wanted to see, is there anything about if my child attends a private school, if there's something tips you want to give for that or any?
So, okay, really the one thing about private schools, and I'm sure every state is different, but there's a federal law, child find, which is public schools have to find students and evaluate if there is a disability suspected. Okay, so keep that in mind. So the public schools are going to do more of those evaluations. Now, after that report is written, you know, if you're at a private school, you may not get anything or you may not get the level as if you were enrolled in public school, because when a parent chooses private schools, they are waiving their right to a free appropriate public education. And so they go to private school, but the law says public schools can test. So you would just contact your local public school.
Right, that does not sound easy.
No, it's yeah. Um, but in a nutshell, that's for special education. And really, I wouldn't think you would need anything for 504 because you're just at the private school. And so it's up to them as to whether they want to provide anything. And sometimes they don't have to. And it all depends on funding. So
And
I know that's kind of hard to kind of wrap your head around, but I could talk a lot more about it. But I think just keeping it basic for right now is the way to go with that.
And can I also ask a question about just ask about the testing of how to move forward? Something's coming up for me. Is it okay if I ask a question?
Sure.
Um, so when I was in school, they told my mom to get me tested for ADD, but so they got me tested, but should my mom have said, can you get her, test her? What I'm trying to say is, I found out later on I was dyslexic and dysgraphia. Is there a
Mhm.
way that I could have found that out at earlier on? If like, should my mom have said, can you test her for everything, or I don't know.
Well, I would definitely when you're just I would say you know, I want a full individual evaluation. I have concerns with ADHD, possible concerns with dyslexia, and if the evaluator is going to go about it the right way, she'll look at all, or he or she, sorry, will look at all the areas.
Okay.
And so, of course, I'm sure now, and at least I know in Texas, I mean, you're an adult now, so I'm sure a lot of things have changed since you were younger.
Sure.
But I know in Texas, they screen for dyslexia and so forth.
Okay.
So, and that's at the classroom level.
So what I'm hearing from you is things could be much different now. Like someone might not,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So someone
Lots
might,
of changes.
is that I would have known that, in second grade, my life would have been so much different.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
that's why I don't want others to suffer from that.
Yeah. And if I bet the rules were different back then, somewhat. So,
I
yeah.
believe that as well.
Yeah.
And you've said a lot of gold nuggets. Gold nugget to me is something that I write down in a sentence and I keep on a note card. You've said a lot of gold nuggets here. So,
Oh, good.
is there anything about school accommodations that we didn't touch on that you'd like to expand on?
Um, I would just let the parents know that the teachers get those on or before the first day of school, and then they're updated as things change, as like when there's a meeting to change something. So they should always have them
Okay. So
and be following through.
we have to follow, stay on top of things too.
Mhm. Yeah, and I would just really think about those that are necessary because it can get hard when somebody has like 20 of them, 20 accommodations, and just trying to manage. And if it's a school that documents, it just gets to be a lot. But if that's what a child needs, they need.
Hmm.
But I'm just saying, just stick to what they're really using and needing.
That is very useful. But, like,
Mhm.
what I'm hearing is setting up their environment to thrive. Like, what do they need to
Yeah.
environment?
Hmm.
That essentially is
Absolutely.
504 and IEP, like you said,
Yes.
in your PowerPoint. So, and as we all know, like we're our own brand of ADHD, and I do truly believe that our siblings, we know our ADHD better oftentimes than we know ourselves. So if someone does need help acknowledging symptoms, I would, lean on your trusted people to help you, because that happened to
Absolutely.
me. My older sister pointed out my ADHD when I didn't even know it really was showing up for
Of
me. So and that's also, the working memory, seeing things as they are.
course.
So, but
Mhm.
anyway, As everyone knows, you guys can get in touch with me at easyadhdcoaching.com, and I'm starting my new Instagram handle at easyadhdcoaching. And to our special guest, Stacey, you can reach her at hillcountryadhd.com. And in our show notes, there will be a link for her QR code. You can sign directly up for her education consulting. And I really recommend this to you guys because you can dive a little bit deeper on the technical terms of the IEP and 504 plans and dive a little bit deeper on what you think your child, which category they go under. So I do, take that time to sign up. And were you going to say something, Stacey? I'm sorry.
Well, even though I'm in Texas, I can certainly, this information is still good for everybody nationwide.
I agree. And I agree. And thank you, Stacey, for being our special guest today. And thank you,
You're
everyone, for
welcome.
joining. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.